In my journey into the Regency dress, I need to make all the important undergarments. For now, I have skipped making of the stays because I have a pair. I did not make my own. We're moving into the creation of the petticoat, or what you would wear under your dress. The petticoat was important layer because you would wear it on top of your stays or the corset to smooth all the bumpiness. A petticoat was basically creating that Regency silhouette. It was important to have pleats or gathers at the back. Because I'm making a bit of a later version of a Regency dress where the front would be very smooth and the back is where all the pleats would go, I have decided to go with the same petticoat style. Basically, the petticoat would very much recreate what the dress itself would look like, but most of the time the petticoats were quite sheer, or in some cases they were very colorful and the dress itself was sheer, so you could see the petticoat underneath. Whereas in my case, the petticoat won't be visible and it's important to make it not as sheer. For this project, I have used Laughing Moon pattern and cut out the pieces out of muslin fabric already for the bodice, and also sewn them all together as per instructions have been stated. This is how a fully sewn bodice looks like. It is not finished yet because we still need to add bias tape and also add the skirt. Before starting the project, I've decided to sew in the mock-up first, just to see how everything looks. Now, after sewing in all the pieces, I'm working at connecting the shoulder straps together. I am now creating the back closures by folding the back pieces and creating a button band for me to sew in the buttons later. Now that the bodice is finished, I am applying bias tape all around the raw edges to hide these raw edges, as there is no lining that would usually hide all the raw edges of the garment. After pinning the bias tape to the bodice, I am sewing it all around the raw edges. Now that the first side of the bias tape has been sewn to the bodice, I'm cutting triangles out of the other side of the bias tape so that I can easily fold it at the curves. Using linen thread and felt stitch, I am sewing the folded side of the bias tape to the bodice. As I am hand stitching this, it is taking a long time to hand stitch it, but I believe that at the end it looks a lot better because none of the stitches are visible, as if I used a machine sewing technique where the stitches would have been visible, and that would have been a lot less historically accurate. I am now sewing the ribbon to the front of the bodice so that I can cinch the front of the bodice when it is complete. And I have only hid the front side of the bodice with the bias tape, but the armholes are the next to follow. This bodice is very small, but it took me so long to work on it as I have been doing a lot of hand stitching, more hand stitching than machine stitching on this project. Now I'm encasing the raw edges of the armholes with the bias tape and sewing them all together, and then I'm going to be first machine stitching them and then hand stitching them with the felt stitch and a linen thread as the front of the bodice. I have now finished bias taping around the armholes and also around the front of the bodice. Now the bodice is fully finished. I'm now cutting the pieces for the skirt of the petticoat. For this project, I have miscalculated, and that's why I had to do some piecing, because I didn't have enough of fabric for this tiny little triangle. So I had to basically cut a tiny little triangle and then sew it to the petticoat, to the skirt of the petticoat. But this method is very historically accurate because piecing was very much a thing throughout the 18th century and 19th century, and it was practiced very commonly, and because fabric was very expensive, and if you had, a tiny piece that you really needed for a skirt, you would piece it, or if you had a tiny piece that you needed for a bodice, you would also do piecing. Now that all pattern pieces have been cut for the skirt, I am now connecting all the skirt pieces together to create a big tube. And the skirts were huge for the petticoats. They were, I believe this one is about 3 meters or maybe 2, but as you can see, it is very big, and you would wonder, how am I gonna fit it to myself? Well, it is not very magical. It is a very simple method of doing some gathering stitches and making it gathered skirt. For the gathering stitches, I have used my sewing machine and the longest stitch, and then I am basically gathering all around, and after that I am sewing the fullness of the skirt to the bodice. Now that the skirt and the bodice are connected, I am hiding all the raw edges using my linen thread. I believe for this one actually it was a bit too heavy for my muslin fabric, but still I think it turned out nicely. As you can see, I have also used a felt stitch method, but the instructions were saying a different method, but I didn't really like it because I had quite a very bulky fabric in some areas, and that's why I decided to go with a felt stitch. For this project, I decided to create my own buttons. I only needed 3 buttons, and I've decided to go with Dorset buttons, and these are very easy because you basically create a button using only linen thread. In my case, I had linen thread, so I went with linen thread, but you can use any type of thread that is a heavyweight. You can also use like a plastic pieces to encase them in linen thread, or silk thread if you want very fancy Dorset buttons. But for me, for this project, linen thread was the best thread to use. The petticoat is not yet finished, but this is how it looks after I have finished the bodice. I have finished the skirt, attached it to the bodice, and also created some buttonholes, a button band. I also reinforced the opening of the skirt so that there won't be any ripping, and I have added only 1 button, as I only made 1. It's time to make more Dorset buttons because I need to make another one. I got 1. It is all done. Here it is. And now I'm gonna make another one. Got my linen thread in this little pouch, where I also keep my wax. And here's the linen thread. First thing, I'm gonna tie a knot twice around the pencil, and then wrap the thread around the pencil 40 times. For me, it's gonna be 40 times because I have a bit of a lightweight thread, so I'm just gonna count now. Counting is important. So I got 40 now, and this is how it's gonna look. Now what we're gonna do is we need to cut the thread. about a yard. Just kind of go like this. Now I have a yard of thread, and then we're gonna thread a needle. I'm still holding it. It's a bit awkward, but we're gonna thread the needle and place it somewhere. I placed it on my little pin cushion. And now we're making sure to hold this with our fingers. You just slide it. Make sure to hold and keep the hole in place. Like that. Now we, still holding, we grab the needle, and what we're gonna do, so we're gonna make a buttonhole stitch, and voila, this is the first buttonhole stitch, and you just basically buttonhole stitch it all around until you have covered the whole circumference of this little circle. And if you make it correctly, every single stitch is in order and it looks very neat, and this is how you make it. It's very easy. It's also important to make sure that this thread is on the right hand side, and your needle is gonna be on the right hand side or the left hand side for you. And then this is how the knot is created. If it's not in the correct position, the knot is not going to be created, and it's just going to be like a loop, but you need a knot. The article itself has a little video. I found that article very nicely written. Whoever made it is a wonderful human being. Thank you very much for that information. I really love internet. Like you find so many cool things on it that you didn't even know that existed, and people just put in so much effort to the research that they're making, and most of the information is for free. Obviously, if it's not for free, it's in a book, and it's just marvelous that you can just access this information so easily. Some days I feel like, oh my god, so many cool things we have on the internet. It also makes you appreciate the craft a lot more, and the beauty of this is that the craft of making a Dorset button is continuing and people are not forgetting it. When it comes to other cultures, for example, my culture, it's a lot harder to find this information. In my village, the only way to get the information is from another person. You don't really have any books. Meaning another person, meaning your relative, an older grandmother. If nobody asks your grandmother, that's it. You don't get that information. And this is so sad. A lot of craft is being lost. For me, it's very hard to even think about how most of our traditional costumes were made, or like what we did to create buttons. Did we have buttons? What did they look like? I can't ask my grandmothers anymore, unfortunately. They passed away. The only way to find it out is by Googling other other towns, and maybe other people that still continue with the crafts and our traditions. But unfortunately, a lot of things are being lost to time. And that's the worst thing, really. The information is quite limited. When it comes to British historical fashion, or just European in general, you get a lot more than something that is like a folk costume, especially if it's a minority group. There is a folk costume for Bulgaria, but what about Bulgarian Turks? Us, a minority in Bulgaria, we are called Bulgarian Turks. The only thing that I have is, I don't even want to call it extant garments, but it's what my grandmother wore or what my mom wore to her wedding. And that's it. We don't have a lot. Well, what's the point of this whole discussion is that some cultures are luckier than others, and it's still possible to find information about my culture. It's just a lot harder to access it because it is not so widely researched as other cultures are. But there's still books. There's still people that are interested in this. Obviously, a lot of the things that are in my culture are inspired by the Ottoman Empire. Not only inspired, but is what was worn during the Ottoman Empire. Not everything that was worn in the Ottoman Empire did pass to our village, but there are some similarities definitely, like choices of fabric and styles in general. Because now I can make Dorset buttons, but can I make my own culture's buttons? No. I don't know what kind of buttons they used. Probably they were metal, again, if we're talking about if they were inspired by the Ottoman Empire, then it should be something similar to that. That is it from me, my little blabby blab. I made a bit of progress here. I really love just chatting and crafting. It's very relaxing. Slowly talking and crafting. After hemming the petticoat is done. I have also sewn 2 remaining buttons, and I think the buttons just made it such a special touch. I really love them, and I think it was the best decision that I have ever made. I think this petticoat turned out wonderful, and I have worn it multiple times now. I had to re-hem it because it was a bit too long for me, but I think it would be a wonderful garment for me to wear a long time, and it is such a beautiful thing that I have created. It's quite an interesting adventure because you can see that there is a lot of time and effort is put into every single piece, and there are a lot of layers. And I will tell you, because in the future I already wore this, and it is very warm, especially in English weather, and it was summer, but it was cold. But not for me, because I had 4 layers underneath of things. And it was very nice and toasty. People in history knew what they were doing. And also, I was not hot at all. It was wonderful. I hope you like this video of me creating a Regency petticoat, also a very important layer of undergarments to create that Regency silhouette. And I hope to see you in my next video. Have a wonderful time, everyone, wherever you are in the world.